Death is such a beautiful caress across my...
Welcome! Time has no meaning here. Your pain will...
Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my day 3/4 update to the Saboteur Pirate class that is now Hexblast. This was always the plan. It was to play Pirate class with a really cheap, razor-thin budget, and then pour all of my currency into making this character because I was excited about playing Hexblast again. I loved playing it last time. And I had a cool idea of how I wanted to build it into Wrath Pith, going all the way over to Blood Magic and stacking some life, getting Calm Spirit with some Rage Generation, and just zooming around with Berserk. Now, to get this character going, the main transitional pieces we needed were Wrath Pith. Number 1, because that's our damage scaler. When we stack a lot of life, 1500 life gives us about 750% crit chance and about 750% spell build. And then we combine that with Dissolution. This allows us to help us get that number of HP up. And it means if I'm spending a lot of life and I'm spending myself down to 0, I'm not actually dying, because Dissolution changes the death condition from dying to the red life going down to enemies now hit us and they reserve our life. So the way we die is if our life gets reserved to 0. It might have looked like in the footage we were close to dying, but we weren't close at all. Now, on top of all of that, the other main piece we need is Balbal. I know everybody's going to make the jokes, it's a Lance build, but hear me out. Raider's just really good, guys. I basically am able to have mediocre gear with basically no resistances. If you look at my gear, there's basically no resistances on this gear. And just putting in Balbala means we take a character that would be at 33 fire res, -11, -11, and now we're capped res. And this is easy to sustain. We don't really have to invest into anything over this, and it works fantastically. The main thing you need to sustain Flask is you need Flasks that have the reduced charge use mod at max roll or charge recovery at max roll. I do not recommend the charge recovery with reduced effect, as it will brick your resistances and you'll need a bit compensate. Now, that being said, those are the building blocks. Those are the main things you need. I right now have a Sandstorm and I have a nice crafted rare belt. Initially, I didn't have these. They were not necessary. Initially, I was using a Magnate and I was using a Gold. These allowed me to have basically a lot of life scaling from our chest piece, Blunderbore, along with a lot of damage scaling from the double damage, triple damage stuff, Magnate, and on top of that, a little bit of res and some flash generation bonuses from Magnate. It's a nice 50C belt. It's pretty hard to beat. Eventually, when you can craft a nice rare belt, you can beat it, but until then, this is a fantastic placeholder. Now, you're probably wondering, why Blunderbore, Lance? Why are you doing that? It has such a high strength requirement. Well, number 1, strength is something you want to invest into anyways to get a lot of life, especially when you're trying to scale for Wrath Pit. And number 2, it's actually really good for life stackers, because the way this chest piece works is it gives you the massive shrine, or the lesser massive shrine. The lesser massive shrine gives 20% life, 20% AoE, and then the chest piece has effective buffs for the shrine. So it gives 35% life and 35% AoE at basically the max roll, along with another 35% damage from Brutal Shrine. The important thing and the reason I like this chest piece on top of all of that is we are purposely grabbing every life mastery for 10% more life. Very efficient. But technically on this chest piece, we don't have a life modifier. We have these shrine modifiers, but they're not considered life modifiers. So this chest effectively has 35% life without actually having a life modifier. So when you look at this thing, we're getting another 15% life on top of our chest that is 35% life. I think it's a nice combo. And on top of that, 50% AoE, 50% damage. I think it's beautiful. I like it a lot. Blunderbore is really common. And the main thing is, eventually, I'd like to get +2 AoE, +1 socketed, 50% damage, reduce damage taken on crit damage or whatever. There's a lot of good corruptions we could have. Eventually, I'm going to start corrupting some Blunderbores. Cheap, they're pretty common. and I like it a lot. If you're wondering for coloring this chess piece, you have a few options. You do off coloring plus Marici plus Omen of blocking, or you just do some Omen of blockings, or you just do double corrupting and hope you hit 6 whites. And if you double corrupt and hit plus levels, well, there's chances are I or somebody else will pay you a lot of money for a good double corruption on the chess piece. And or you could use it yourself by coloring it with tainted chromes. Right now, the tainted currency market's kind of crazy. That's what I'd recommend as your options for going for Blunderboard. On top of all of that, I am using Grand Spectrums here. You might think these are mandatory, they're very expensive. I'm not convinced they're even the correct play. I'm going to put myself up here quick here. I'm not even convinced they're the correct play because Mind Throw Speed's just so good, Crit Multi's just so good, and these give me about 15% life, and I'm not sure it's worth the investment. Crit capping already pretty easily, and going much more over 15k life is not getting us any crit chance benefit. It's getting us a lot more spell damage, or a little bit more spell damage, which I'm not sure we really even need. So ultimately, I'm going to recommend getting jewels with percent life, throw speed, crit multi, stats like that, rares, and eventually I'm even thinking about going for things like split personality over here at some point. That's some of my thoughts on it. I've only bought these Grand Spectrums because they were really cheap early league. I know they're going to go up, and it's something where I'm buying it as an investment where I'm thinking, oh, I can sell those later and then craft maybe what I want for less money and have a nice profit margin. I like to invest in things early on, and that's just kind of what my brain goes to when I think about it. After all of this stuff, we are also taking care of the dangerous things for dissolution builds, which are ailments: Ignite, Poison, Bleed, Corrupted Blood. In my opinion, in order for us to play Dissolution and have fun, we need to solve these ailments. How are we doing it? With a Saboteur, we're getting Ignite immunity here. We are getting 60% Bleed Avoid here, Corrupted Blood immunity, 40% Bleed Avoid, so we're capping our Bleed Avoidance, and then you see this has Cannot Be Poisoned on it. The way you craft these boots is just get a fractured life pair of boots, and then use Essence of Delirium, which gives the Cannot Be Poisoned mod, try to roll for strength, and then either bench craft on movement speed, or do a Bristle Matron to force on movement speed. Those are kind of your options. Eventually, when I craft a nicer pair of boots, I'll start playing around with trying to get an Abyssal Socket, strength, and Cannot Be Poisoned, and really min-max it. But for right now, these were the settled pair of boots that I made when I was trying to transition over to this, when I didn't have a lot of currency to my name. Now, all that being said, on top of that, a pen enchant would be an awesome damage modifier to have on the well, because it works great with mines. You never count as having killed recently, because it's your mines doing the killing. All right, after all of that, why are we doing Calm Spirit? This is the other foundational item of the build. It's pretty simple. I want to be able to sustain my Berserk uptime. Berserk uptime, to me, is a really good thing because it represents the build feeling good to play. If I press Berserk, I move faster, I shield charge faster, I move around, and on top of all that, it's not just for movement speed and quality of life, it also gives 20% less damage taken, which is a massive tank bonus, which works on dots, by the way, whereas Fortified doesn't. And on top of that, we could get a Berserk effect enchant, which makes it basically take even less damage. And then on top of all of that, we do have buff grants 11% more spell damage. If we attach this to an enhance, that gives us a nice damage boost. I love it. And then the way it works is, although we're regenerating all this, or returning all this life regen into Rage Sustain, because we have 15k life and we have 10% regen from our Ascendancy, 3% regen from our Flask, that's all like almost 2k regen per second. And that'd be 20 rage per second. We don't have quite that much because we're using Eternal Youth. Cuts the rage regen in half, but it's still a lot of rage regen. And the reason we have to do that is because when we're using our life regeneration as rage regen, how do we sustain our life pool? Because we have a Rapid, we're spending our life down. How do we sustain it? Eternal Youth basically makes us always have a constant recharge of our life pool. You'll see here, life recharge per second at 5k. So that's when I'm spending, that's all that life comes back, and it allows us to all our skills that cost life fantastically. On top of all that, I have a Wither Totem when I get to bosses, or when the bosses initially spawn, I have Withering Step with the All Quality on top of an Enhance, and that inflicts 11 Withers right out the gate, so that way we can get this huge burst of increased damage taken on the enemy. So whenever a boss is spawning in, I'll press Withering Step, I'll proc those Withers on them, and hopefully I'll just demolish them. So that's kind of the idea of the character. That's the breakdown. As for crafting gear, I'll give you a quick little TLDR on most of the pieces. Omen Wand, you need an item level 82 wand or lower. Do a combination of fossils, which is Metallic, Shuddering, Corroded. Those will give you a +2, about 1 in 12 odds, because that's the odds to hit a 6 mod item. Essentially, what those do is they block every other possible mod in the wand mod pool, and that means you can only roll those. If unfortunately, once you hit the +2, you do have to risk 50-50 annul, try to annul a suffix, and then benchcraft something like throw speed or crit multi to try to increase your damage. Keep in mind here, flat fire doesn't naturally roll. The way that occurred is I annulled my spell damage, which was 90%. I still can't believe I hit 90% spell damage. I deleted it, so it felt bad. And then I tried to do a suffix to prefix to open up my suffix pool, hit fire to damage. Unfortunately, that doesn't help as I have void manipulation, but that's okay. Speaking of void manipulation, before you get Sandstorm Visage, you do have to run increased crit chance here. So that's the main difference in Sandstorm damage compared to full damage. You do have to sacrifice that damage. After all of that, as far as crafting the other gear pieces are, it's Zeal Essence spam on a % strength belt until you get good strength. Try to craft life on it. It's using Reforged Caster on Harvest with a Hunter Ring, item level 82, I believe. It's like a 1 in 10 to hit LE weakness. You just keep doing Reforged Caster until you hit some odds. As for the Fractured Ring, it's basically just Essence of Scorn until you hit some OK affixes. I hit Int. This allows me to have a little bit more Int passives tattooed. And as for the Amulet, it's doing a Fractured All Attribute with either Essence of Rage or Essence of Scorn until you hit Strength or until you hit Crit Multi. That should break down all the crafts. As for tattoos, you'll notice we have a lot of tattoos in this build. Basically, every single int passive I changed into % life, help our life scaling. And then the last but not least tattoo, we have a loyalty tattoo of Matata. What this does, and this is all loyalty tattoos, they have this 80-second cooldown, but when you first enter a zone, the cooldown is fresh or it's not there yet because you have to proc it and then it'll proc 80-second cooldown. The way it works is, in Sanctum, every single room is a new zone, and I just always have this guy up. But the reason I want this in the character is I don't have perfect flask uptime. My flask will last like a minute 40 or 2 minutes. I don't know exactly. I didn't math it out. The point is they have a limited amount of time they will last. Normally, I call this practical uptime, where if you're playing the game, it never goes down. You're killing monsters. That'll be the extra flasks you need. But with Matata, he grants, during his 12-second duration, 5 flash charges every 3 seconds. So he'll grant about 20 flash charges over the duration of him being next to you, which essentially is a buffer where we would be running out of flasks, and we get this influx of flash charges, which takes us back to full. So it ends up giving us maybe perfect uptime on our flask if we're proccing this guy, which he would be, because his condition is if you're next to a unique monster and you reach low life. And we reach low life all the time while playing this specific character. All right. Hopefully that covers everything. Oh, one more thing. We are using the tattoo for +1 int gem. It's like 2 divines when I bought it. I'm sure it's going up or down in price. I don't know what the market looks like, but that allows us to get another gem level on our Hexblast. Okay, I think that covers everything for the character. Let's go ahead and get into a Baron map. I can showcase you what this looks like with mapping, give you an idea of the playstyle. Then we'll just close out the video with all I gotta say is Hexblast is fine. It's got auto targeting, it's got big AoE. This can do basically any content. The only content I'd be a little bit concerned about is maybe a, I want to call it Simulacrum, because there's a lot of chip damage in Simulacrum, and Dissolution is not good at chip damage. But that would be my main concern. I'm mainly using this for Sanctum. Sanctum, by the way, prints a lot of currency. I'm getting on average on a bad run, like 2 divines and 4 currency that aren't divines. And then a lot of times I'm getting 1 to 3 to 4 to 5. I've even gotten 7 raw divines. The Sanctum run, you drop the Sandstorm Relic, that's another multiple divine income. So needless to say, Sanctum is kind of very good for currency. I'd highly recommend it. My one concern with this character going into Sanctum when I originally started with Sand, Bull, Agne, and the weaker version of the build, not as high level, I was concerned about, will I die in the Seal final game? I wasn't sure if my character would survive during the fight. And what I found out to be the case is my character, I have a lot of room for error. I can get hit by the fire wave of Lycian in 83 like 6 or 7 times in a row. So even if I make some big mistakes, I can still proc it a decent amount. Also, I forgot to proc Berserk during this map showcase because I'm a little bit focused on what I'm doing. Needless to say, that's what it looked like to do. Oh, Fate Worse Than Death. We got that in the Veritania full up I did. Okay, that's cool. So we're 2 forces away to a Cortex. Maybe in the next 2 Guardians I do, I'll get the Cortex. Anyways, as I was saying, the one concern I had was Lycia wave phase. If you don't DPS her fast enough, she will do basically a phase where she shoots out these red waves of lightning, fire damage or something, and you have to get through the little windows. You have a lot of room for error. I haven't died to it yet, and now I'm good enough gear that I always kill her before she even does the phase. But that's the one thing where it's a little bit of you have to do it correctly, or if you mess up enough, you can die in that phase because it's a dissolution build. And if you just take a bunch of damage in a row and you don't give yourself that 2-second window to get your life unreserved, you can die. That's my one caveat for recommendation on this build, is you have to be careful of that. But when you get used to playing it, you'll start to really enjoy dissolution, I think, because I enjoy it quite a good time. And then one last thing, get burn ground immunity, and that's pretty much going to cover most of your bases for dot. There are a few more instances like Maven invitations. She can make enemies apply a dot, but it shouldn't really matter because enemies won't do anything. And then the one other thing I can think of is maybe like desecrated. I don't know. There's not too many instances where this build starts to be in pain from once you get the ailment immunities to poison, ignite, bleed, corrupt blood, and burning ground immunity. That covers most of the issues. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care.